Top of Lamed Hey and Aleph, last word on the line. Yeah. So we had in the Mishnah the Shita of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who learned the end of the second pasuk, where we had our prat to follow prat. So the last prat was Michatzanim Me'adzag Lo Yochel, that we specified that from the seeds or the pits or pips and the outer skin of the grapes, even that the Nazir is not allowed to eat. So that was the final prat, the way that we had described it. But Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah doesn't learn it as a prat per se. He learns it to teach you a special din, that in order for a Nazir to be chayev, he has to, for eating chatzanim or zag, he has to eat at least 2 chatzanim and 1 zag. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the kamukim, l'haime chatzanim and zag lomar, she'enu chayev ha'shiocha beis chatzanim v'zag, so prata minale. So where does he come up with the final prat? So the Gemara says he doesn't have to. He could hold like Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer held out the whole thing is a miyat pariba. Miyat pariba means that everything is prohibited to the Nazir, even the olin and the lulavin, even the leaves and the soft branches. The only thing that wouldn't be, because I had a miyut to begin with, so we say we don't include everything, we'll exclude the hard branches of the vine. So he holds like that. Savala, thank you. Savala Rabbi Eliezer, the Darish miyat pariba. Biba say, or alternatively, you could say Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah holds like both. He holds like the Chachamim that it's all a prat to klal prat, and we would in fact exclude Olin and the Lovin. But he also holds that the wording, because it was written in this weird way of Mechatzanim Me'adzag, teaches that when the Nazir is chayav for eating Chatzanim or Zag, he has to eat both. He has to eat, and he has to eat 2 Chatzanim and 1 Zag. Levi Sema Kirabanim, because the Ikaz Sakadaita Fakida Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, if it only came to teach me that you have to have 2 Chatzanim and 1 Zag in order to be chayav, then Lichtavei Rahman al Haifn Chatzanim Me'adzag Gabi Prati. Then that specification could have been written together with all the other specifications. When it said, "Vanavim lachim biveshim lo yochel" in Bamidbar Perek Vav Pasuk Gimel, it could have said "Mechatzanim Me'adzag lo yochel" in the original list of specific cases. But the fact that this specific case is only written at the end of the next pasuk, after it had already said the cloud of Mikol Asher Yasem Migef and Hayayin, and then afterwards it said "Mechatzanim Me'adzag lo yochel." So that teaches me that it's also coming to serve as an extra prat. Well, if that's the case, maybe that's the whole reason it was written. Maybe it's not to teach me this special din of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that you have to have at least 2 chatzanim and 1 zag. It just teaches me, you're chayav for eating chatzanim and you're chayav for eating zagim. So the Gemara says no. In Cain, if that was the case, that it's just coming to teach me that you have a prat at the end, so that I will limit the cases. So then, since the din that it's teaching me as well is that Yechayev Chatzanim Azagim, it could have said Mechatzanim Adzagim, or it could have said Mechatzon Me'adzag. It could have listed both of them in the same tense, both in the singular tense or both in the plural tense. In Cain. Lichtov o shnei chatzanim o shnei zogim shnei chatzanim v'zogim o chatzan v'zog, or it could have said ar chatzan v'adzog. My hilchos kasav achmana me chatzanim v'adzog. Why did it say 1 in the plural and 1 in the singular? So that comes to teach me this additional din as well. Shma mina the midrash pei klau uprat, because nami the midrash pei ashiocha shnei chatzanim v'zog. So it teaches me both. The fact that it's the end teaches me the principle of prat to klau uprat, and the fact that it says specifically this weird lashon mechatzanim in the plural, v'adzog in the singular, teaches me that when the nazir is chayav for eating a chatzan or a zag, he's only chayav for each 2 chatzanim and 1 zag. Yeah, Rabbi Eliezer, we're in the middle of the page. Rabbi Eliezer, the Darish Miyat Bariba. So Rabbi Eliezer here in this particular case, Darshins Miyat Bariba. But other places in Shas, we find that we have Chachamim who are darshaning various halachos based on pratu uklalu prat, klalu pratu klaus, and Rabbi Eliezer doesn't disagree. So he clearly holds that there's such a principle as well. So where does he derive that from? Since he doesn't hold that these psukim are teaching me it, so it must be he's getting it from other psukim. Pratu klalu prat minale. So Amar Rabbi Avos says naftale mehaikra. He picks it up from the following pasuk that teaches me about when is it that a shomer has to take a shvua. That if a person is entrusted with an animal that's capable of being watched, a chamor or a shur or a seh, donkey, an ox or a lamb, prat, okay, that's a specific animal. So then it says, he's trusted with any animal, that's a klal. Lishmor, and then it says, no, but it has to be something that's capable of being watched. So kazu prat, pratu klal prat, and it's any animal that's capable of being watched, as opposed to like you give somebody a lion or a bear, so they don't have to take a shvu or something happens to it. So therefore, it teaches me that you wouldn't be you'd be chayav for any animal, even those that are not specified, but not for lions and bears. So it means that it's capable of shmira. It's capable of shmira. You can't really watch a lion. You can't watch a bear. You just run for your life. So Rava Amar nafkale mehaika. Rava says, right, there was that fellow who made a whole living out of watching bears and taking records of what the bears do and so forth until the bears, gobbled him up and his girlfriend one day. So you can't really watch. Rava Amar nafkale mehaika. So Rava said that you can derive it from the following pasuk. V'im says im. What's this talking about? This is talking about korbanos that you would bring. So it says v'im if you go v'im min atzon korbono. So v'im min means that it's only from some of them. That's a prat. That's only from some of them. So this would teach me, that some animals are going to be excluded. Maybe if it was an animal that was engaged in an avera, that it had relations with a human being, with a woman. Where it was worshipped as a avodah zarah, it was set aside as a avodah zarah. So that's v'im min prat. Atzon cloud. But atzon, then it says v'im min atzon. Atzon sounds like any animal is going to be okay. That's a cloud. Then the end of the pasuk says min aksavim o min ha'izim le'olah, which indicates it's only a certain class of animals. So I already know that all that's sown is good. So it says min. Now it says min aksavim o min ha'izim. So only some of them. Chazer prat. Pratu klal prat. So this is also a pratu klal prat. Prat. The principle is that you could only bring, animals that we have some sort of a limitation. What's the limitation going to be? Limitation will be that if it was an animal where an avera had been done on the animal itself, the animal was engaged in having relations with a human being, or it was worshipped as a avodah zarah, so then you wouldn't be allowed. Then you wouldn't be allowed to bring it. However, there is some sort of a riboy. What we would allow is if there wasn't intrinsically something that was done to the animal, but just that I did an avera and I happened to utilize the animal. That I, for example, use the animal to plow on Shabbos. So that would be okay because that's not something which changes the identity of the animal. This is an animal of avodah zarah. This is an animal that was a rubeus. That would be okay. So so Amalei Rabbi Yehuda Midiskarta the Rava. So Rabbi Yehuda Midiskarta said to Rava, but I have another pasuk that I could have derived it from earlier on at the very beginning of Sefer Vayikra. It talks about Adam ki yakriv mikem korban l'Hashem min behema min bako min atzon takribas korbanchem. Why don't I use that pasuk? Because that also starts off with the word min behema, which sounds like I start with a prat, then I have behema, and that's a cloud. Min prat, behema cloud, and then it has specific animals, which are baka, vitzon, chazer, prat, prat klal, prat, iatadon, ela, ke'ena prat. And that would teach me only behemoths can I use, and not chayos, but I can use animals of any ages. So amalei min hai leika lemishma mina. So the first reaction is no, you couldn't have derived from here because since behema chaya is b'chlal behema, so therefore I would have just said that the whole thing is just sort of adding to each other. Since chaya is b'chlal behema, it's like it's saying You could bring from the behema, and you could also bring from the chaya. That there's no min over here. It's not mashma that the word min is going to exclude a chaya. That I would so I'm like min hai leikan lemishma minadi mihasam ava mina ha behema. That from the word behema, I already know the chaya is b'chla behema. So it says that. So the retort of the one who asked the question, that's Rabbi Yehuda, who asked the question, he said, I don't think that's true. I think that chaya, how could you say chaya meklal behema? Haksiv baka of its own. It says very clearly that we're talking in the final prat in that pasuk at the beginning of Sefer Vayikra. It says mina bakar umina tzon takribu es korbanchem. So clearly, we're not saying that the chayas are included. V'havale prat uklal uprat. And we have therefore a specification at the end that would indicate that it's not automatically included, and therefore that this would be a good example of where I have a limitation, that it's not that the behema automatically includes a chaya. I have the limitation based on the pratim that we see that we're limiting the cloud to only be things which are like the prat, which are bak of its own, which are behemoths and not chaya. So I could have learned. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, I could learn the principle of prat to klal prat from any of these psukim. But how do we know? This is going back to the assuming not like Rabbi Eliezer, assuming that as a general rule, even here in the case of the Nazir, we're going to learn the whole thing as a prat to klal uprat, and that we're going to include things which are similar to the prat. So how do I know that there's such an idea that whenever I have a prat to klal uprat, that I include everything that is in the category of prat, even if it's not specifically singled out? For example, we include with the grapes that are not completely ripe, and those who are the wormy grapes, and so forth and so forth. We know in the Tanya v'nasata kesef l'chol asher taben nafshecha, because it says that when you buy from Ma'aser Sheni, you can use the Ma'aser Sheni money for anything that you want. That sounds like a clout. But then it says, no, you got to use it for specific things. It has to be things that are like food items that come from things that originate from the ground. Prat. And then it says, then it says anything that you want. So it's going to be more than the specific examples of the animals of bakar and son, or the drinks of yayin and sheikha, because it's a bechol asher tishalcha nafshecha. Chazavu klal. So therefore, that comes to include a more general extrapolation. So klalu prat to klal iatadan ela ke'ena prat. So here we find explicitly that the Brisa tells us that you include, you don't include everything. You don't include everything, but you include those things which are ke'ena prat. Ma prat mefurish pri mi pri. Just like the prat is something which is an item, sort of a living organism that gives birth, that can give birth to another living organism, like you have an animal that can give birth to another animal. And from here as well, let's say I had fish. So I have one fish, so the fish, spawn additional fish. That would also be pre. But we also have that the specific examples that are given are begidule karka, things that either grow from the ground, like, I have wine that comes from vines, or things that nourish from the ground, like animals receive their nourishment from the ground. That would not include fish, because the fish don't receive their nourishment from the ground. So af kol pri begidule karka. Therefore, everything that we're going to allow you to buy from Ma'aser Sheni money would have to fit into all of those categories. That it was, and it wouldn't be like, it can't be karka itself, because it has to be things that come from the karka, and it would be, but it has to be something that's like pre, like idule karka, mushrooms and truffles. Kimin ve'itrios would not be included, because even if they grew on the ground, they don't receive the nourishment from the ground. They receive the nourishment from the air, and it wouldn't include fish either, because fish are also not gidule karka. It wouldn't include mayim umelach, because mayim, water, is not pre. It's not something which is spawned by something else. And the same thing with respect to the melach. So therefore, it would exclude all of these different types of things.
So it
Okay.
doesn't have to be the gidul of what he has, but it has to be karka. Whatever it is involved.
It would have to be
karka.
something that comes from karka or that receives nourishment from karka. That would be as you look in the Rosh, shegedelim and izonim isvei adama, something that's right that grows from that. But birds would be included because the birds get their nourishment from the ground, and the birds give birth to other birds through eggs and so forth. So therefore, that's considered to be pre. So mithe klalu pratu klau ke'ein pratu daininan. Okay, so once we have this principle that klalu pratu klau, everything is going to, we're not going to rely upon the last klau to say that everything is included. Like in this case, we say not that you can buy anything with ma'aseh sheni money. It would have to be ke'ena prat. It would have to be something similar to bakar v'tzonu v'yayin v'shecha, right? It could be it could be birds. It could be something like that. It could be chicken. That's also okay. But klala basa maya honey. So why do I have a klal at the end if I'm going to limit it to the specific cases? So we say a honey la supe called the domile. That comes to include everything in the class of the items that are listed. Otherwise, I would have been limited only to the specific items that are listed. If I have a klalu prat, so then all that I can include is the items, all that I have is what's in the prat or the specific items that are in the prat. The su and the fact that I had a klal at the beginning teaches me that this is in the realm of klalu prat. I can't, expand it further with Zera Shovers and the like. Vesu prat, as Tosa says. Vesu pratu klalu prat ke'ena prat and daininan. And what about this other, type of formulation that we have, like with respect to Nazir, where I start with a prat, then I have a klal, and then I have a prat at the end. I also say the same principle that I include anything which is similar to that which is in the specific categories of the prat. So why do I need the final prat of basra, my honey? Since I'm not going to limit it to the specific cases, I'm going to expand it to ke'ein those cases. So we say no. Ila prata basra. If you didn't have the prat, the specification at the end, then if I have a prat to klal, I include everything, which then I say that the klal includes everything. I have no limitation. Have I mean nasa klal mosif ala prat, and everything would be included. So in order to limit what I'm including to that which is in the class of the pratim and not to expand beyond that class, that's why I need the prat at the end. So now the Gemara asks an even tougher question. Train klala yupratu, train pratu yuklala. It doesn't matter, it seems, whether I have a klalu pratu klal, which is the formulation we're more familiar with, right? Or whether I have, which is really how our Gemara got started with the case of Nazir, where I have a prat uklal uprat ke'ein prata daininan. Either way, I'm going to say that I include everything which is similar to the specific items which are listed in the prat. So what's the difference then? Ma'ika beini uveni. What's the difference between a klalu pratu klal and a pratu klalu prat? So ika di'ilu, so the Gemara says that the difference is as follows. If I have a klalu pratu klal, which I call tartin klali, there are two klalim, one at the beginning and one in the end. The tartin klali prata, ika prata dedami le'afilu b'chad sad, since I have two klalim, so even if I have something which is similar to the specified class in one way, but not in two ways, I'm going to include it. Marbina, I'll include it. Trey pratu klala, but if I only have one klal and I have a prat at the beginning and a prat at the end, so then in order to include something in this specific class, it's going to have to be similar in two ways. Ika prata dedami mishnei tzadin marbinin, b'chad sad lo marbinin. But if only is like a little bit similar, but it's not similar to like all the examples, like similar to one example, not all the examples. So then I'm not going to include it. So the Tosfos, when pressed for like a nafkamina, so how does this play out? Tosfos says, well, it plays out only in theory and not in practice. In practice, if it's going to be similar in one side, it'll be similar in two stadin. If it's not similar in two stadin, it's not going to be similar at all. Therefore, there's no real nafkamina. That's what it sounds like from Tosfos. The Mefarish gives you an nafkamina. The Mefarish gives a nafkamina. I was just talking to Moish Khan at the Chasana last night. He said he doesn't even, when he learns the Daf Yomi and he doesn't even look at the Mefarish. He only looks at the Rush because the Mefarish so often has shatim that don't resonate. So I agree, often the pshatim don't resonate. But here the Mefarish gives you a nafkamina, and he gives you in the nafkamina, he says that if you, it has to be similar in Tutstadin. So in the case of the Meiser Sheni, it would have to be both pri and Gidule Karka. So then I wouldn't include fish. But if it could be similar in one side, so fish are pri, they're just not Gidule Karka. So that would be a nafkamina. So if you look at the Rambam, when the Rambam writes in Perek Zayin of Hilchos Meiser Sheni, what you're allowed to buy with Meiser Sheni money, so he excludes mushrooms, which are not Gedulei Karka, but he does not exclude fish. And some of the Mefarshim say that the Rambam actually would hold that you could include fish. So it could very well be because of the fact that this is a klal. So then I looked in Rav Chaim Kanievsky, the Derech Emuna, on the Rambam Meiser Sheni to see if he has some explanation. He says, yeah, it's true. You could actually learn the Rambam is saying that he includes fish. And he says, I don't know exactly what the source is. He comes up with different Gemaras, different suggestions, doesn't leave it as conclusive. Nobody quotes this Gemara. So it could very well be that the Rambam was learning this Gemara like the Mefarish. He was learning like the Mefarish. He said that since in the case of Meiser Sheni, it's a klal uprat uklal. When you have a klal uprat uklal, so then all you need is a similarity in one way and not two ways. So the Rambam may have held that dogim are similar in that they're pri. You don't need them to be also gidulei karka, and then therefore you could buy it with Meiser Sheni money. So it could be that maybe the Mefarish, found himself a counterpart in terms of how he learned this sugya with the Rambam. Just a suggestion. So anyway, mikli prat uklau nase klau mose al haprat. Since in the case of prat uklau, we find that the klau always includes everything. If I don't have another prat afterwards, Israbi komili umiyat riba nami, and if I have a miyut and a riboy, so the riboy also is going to include everything. Nami riba kol Israbi komili. So now the Gemara asks, what's going to be the difference between if I had a case of a miyut for riba without a miyut afterwards, or if I had a case of a prat uklau without another prat afterwards? Wouldn't it be the same thing? Ma'ika b'miyut for riba, the prat uklau. So says the Gemara, no, there's a difference here as well. Ika. Ti'ilu prat uklau, if in the case of the Nazir, for example, I wouldn't have another prat afterwards, so then mabinan afilu alin v'lulavin. So then I'm going to include even the leaves and the branches. Umiyat beriba, but if I'm learning it umiyat beriba, so the loving in alin lo. So then I'm not going to include everything. I'll include a part of it. I'll include since a riba is not as all-encompassing as a klal. So therefore, I would only include the case of lulavin, but I wouldn't include the case of alin. That's what the that's what the Gemara says, and Tosfos asks on that a little bit because Rabbi Eliezer darshan miyat beriba at the beginning of our sugya, and he included both alin and lulavin. So Tosfos says, if you look in the second line of the last Tosfos, he says v'yesh lomar le'el ma'iri be'alin rachim. That's talking about the soft leaves. Dumid lulavin v'halka ma'iri the kashik sas v'damak sas l'shabishta. Here we're talking about where it might be more like in the realm of hard branches. We're talking about really hard leaves. So that's what would be excluded. But if you would have learned practical, even that would have been included. Okay. So Amar Rabbi Yavo. So Rabbi Yavo says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Koli Sirin Shabbatayva, Ein Hetem Mitzarf L'Isser. If I have an Isser and then I'm combining it together with a Heter, I have some forbidden food. I have half a kazayas of a forbidden food, and I put it like on a piece of bread. And the piece of bread is a permitted food, and the piece of bread, let's say, is a half a kazayas. I put it all in my mouth together. So in the rest of the Torah, I say I'm not chayiv. I put a half a kazayas of pig fat on top of a half a kazayas of a piece of bread, and I ate the whole thing. I don't get malchus. I don't get malchus, but I didn't eat a full kazayas of pig fat. I only ate a half a kazayas of pig fat, so it's not going to be mitzvah.
I thought it's
what? Well, yeah, but it's not batal b'shishim if it's half and half, right? Okay.
Yeah,
but
don't you
in a pot of soup, it's going to be batal b'shishim, but it's not mitzvah. But again, if I don't have a shear for malchus, if I don't have, a chatzi shear is awesome in the Torah. Don't get the idea. I'm not saying you could eat a half a kazayas of pig, but in terms of malchus, you're not going to get malchus if you only ate a half a kazayas of pig fat and a half a kazayas of bread. Okay, but there's an exception to this. The exception is Isurei Nazir. I put a little bit of wine on a piece of bread, so then it's all going to combine together. Because the Torah says that even if the wine is soaked, even if it's soaked, it says the lashon of mishras. I'm not learning I'm not learning from kol mishras. Then before Hashem take pains to point out, I'm learning from the fact it says even if it's soaked, I'm going to be chayiv. It says b'chol mishras anavim lo yishteh. So from the word mishras, I learned that heter is mistaref. It's mistaref leis. Ziri amar af seor bebal saktivu. Even when it says that you're not allowed to burn on the mizbeach anything which is a seor, anything which is sort of yeast or leavened, you're not allowed to burn it on the mizbeach. So it's the same thing over here as well. If I have a little bit of seor and a little bit of dough, and I burn them, and they both combine to a kizayis, so I be chayev for burning them on the mizbeach because it says kol seor v'chol devash lo saktivu b'vas saktivu. So kaman k'Rabbi Eliezer. So there, I'm darshaning from the word in that particular instance with respect to the seor. I'm darshaning from the fact that it says ki chol seor v'chol devash lo saktivu, from the fact that it says kol, all any of it, even if it's a combination. That's what it sounds like. The darish kol ki ihaki. If that's the case. So with respect to chametz too, it says kol. And chametz doesn't have to be the yeast. If it's just any kind of leavened bread, nami, because there as well, it says kol machametzis lo selchelu. When it comes to chametz that I'm eating on Pesach, not just the seor, the yeast that you would burn on the mizbeach, which is one iser, but the iser of eating chametz on Pesach, it also says kol. So there too, you should be chayiv, even if it's betaruvis, even if it's mixed together. We say, yeah, that's correct. In Achinami, according to Zeiri, that would be true. Elafuke me'abaye. The reason why he picked the example of Haktorah, as opposed to the example of not burning on the mizbeach any seor, as opposed to the example of chametz on Pesach, is in order to differentiate himself from the opinion of Abaye. Lafuke me'abaye the Amar yesh Haktorah v'pachos mikazayas. Because Abaye says you could be chayav for Haktorah even if it's not a kazayas. He's saying no. It has to be a kazayas, but it could be combined with other things. Kamash Malan, in Haktorah v'pachos mikazayas. Okay.